behind the shimmering facade of royalty, the cold stone of the castle, the glint of gold on the crown, the rustle of silk in the throne room, lies a raw and vulnerable humanity. We see the portraits, stiff and regal, and imagine lives of untouchable power and divine right. But beneath the ermine robes and jeweled scepters, monarchs were made of the same flesh and blood as the commoners they ruled. They loved, they lusted, they feared, and they suffered. And for centuries, one of the most terrifying specters to haunt the gilded halls of power was a silent, insidious disease. It was known by many names: the Great Pox, the French disease, the Neapolitan disease, each nation eager to blame another for its devastating spread. But its true name was syphilis. This was no simple illness. It was a curse that respected no bloodline and bowed to no king. It crept into royal bedrooms through secret affairs and loveless political marriages. A venom that could poison not just a body, but a mind, a family, and an entire dynasty. It turned handsome princes into weeping, disfigured shells of men, and left proud empires teetering on the brink of collapse, all because of a secret shame that could not be spoken of. It turned handsome princes into weeping, disfigured shells of men, and left proud empires teetering on the brink of collapse, all because of a secret shame that could not be spoken of. This is the story of that shame. It is an exploration of the darkness that festered behind the polished veneer of courtly life, a chronicle of how a microscopic spirochete brought down some of the most powerful figures in history. These are the tales of the top 5 royals whose lives and legacies were irrevocably shattered by syphilis. On the surface, the life of Luís seemed a charmed one. Born in 1838, he was the second son of Queen Maria II of Portugal, a spare to the heir, and thus free from the crushing weight of the crown. While his older brother, Pedro, was groomed for the throne, Luís was allowed to indulge his passions. He was a man of culture and intellect, a gifted polyglot who found solace in literature. His greatest love was for Shakespeare, and he dedicated himself to the monumental task of translating the bard's plays, including Hamlet and The Merchant of Venice, into his native Portuguese. He was the scholar prince, a man of letters, but he was also a man of immense charm and restless desires. With the luxury of royalty but none of the responsibility, he became a notorious playboy. He used his wit and linguistic talents to woo countless women, building a reputation as one of Europe's most dashing and sought-after bachelors. Life was a grand, carefree adventure. Then, in 1861, tragedy struck the House of Braganza with the force of a hurricane. A virulent epidemic, likely typhoid or cholera, swept through the royal family. Within a matter of weeks, it claimed the lives of his beloved older brother, King Pedro V, and 2 of his younger brothers, Fernando and João. Just like that, at the age of 23, the playboy scholar was thrust onto a throne he never wanted, crowned King Luís I. Suddenly, the fate of the dynasty rested on his shoulders. With so many male heirs lost, the need for a legitimate son was a matter of national emergency. Pressured by his royal relatives, including his cousin Queen Victoria of England, Luís entered into an arranged marriage. His bride was the Princess Maria Pia of Savoy, daughter of the King of Italy. She was a mere 14 years old. For Maria Pia, it was a fairy tale. Her new husband was handsome, artistic, and intelligent. She was utterly smitten and dutifully fulfilled her primary role, giving birth to 2 sons, Carlos and Afonso, by the time she was 18. The Braganza line was secure. But behind the closed doors of the palace, the fairy tale was rotting from the inside. Luís could not be tamed by marriage. He continued his affairs, most famously with the popular actress Rosa de Lima. Maria Pia, heartbroken and humiliated, began taking long, lonely trips abroad, and it was whispered at court that she may have sought comfort in affairs of her own. In this tangled web of infidelity and royal duty, Luís contracted syphilis. For years, the disease lay dormant, a hidden poison in his blood. But in the late 1880s, it roared back with a vengeance. The scholar king began to decline not just physically but mentally. He developed neurosyphilis, the terrifying tertiary stage of the disease where it attacks the brain and central nervous system. The man who had once translated Shakespeare with such clarity was now tormented by severe depression, erratic mood swings, agonizing headaches, and seizures. His mind, once his greatest asset, began to crumble. On October 19, 1889, King Luís died at the age of 50, a broken and confused man, a shadow of the vibrant prince he had once been. The silent killer had claimed its royal victim, leaving behind a grieving widow and a kingdom that would never truly know the full extent of his private suffering. Number 4. In the powerful Safavid Empire of 17th century Persia, a 9-year-old boy named Abbas ascended to the throne in 1642. He was no mere puppet. Taking full control from his father's corrupt Grand Vizier at the age of 15, Shah Abbas too showed remarkable promise. He was a just and respected ruler, known for his personal intolerance of corruption and his general tolerance towards his subjects. He steered his empire with a steady hand, securing military victories against the Mughals and Russians while carefully avoiding a costly war with the mighty Ottoman Empire. Under his early rule, the Persian people enjoyed a rare era of peace and stability. But Abbas had another side, a deep-seated love for earthly pleasures that would become his undoing. He reveled in luxury, wine, and women. His court parties were legendary, debauched affairs filled with music, dancing, and goblets of wine that never ran dry. It was said he drank from a golden cup encrusted with rubies, a gift from the Tsar of Russia, and that he would often get so inebriated that he would disappear from public life for weeks to recover. His greatest indulgence, however, was his harem. It was a massive collection of concubines, many of them enslaved women captured from lands the empire had conquered, such as Georgia and Circassia. In this world of endless pleasure-seeking, Abbas's health began to fail. It is unclear exactly when or from whom he contracted syphilis, but by the 1660s, the disease was taking its devastating toll. His greatest indulgence, however, was his harem. It was a massive collection of concubines, many of them enslaved women captured from lands the empire had conquered, such as Georgia and Circassia. In this world of endless pleasure-seeking, Abbas's health began to fail. It is unclear exactly when or from whom he contracted syphilis, but by the 1660s, the disease was taking its devastating toll. At just 34 years old, the once vibrant Shah was a physical wreck, exhibiting the unmistakable and gruesome signs of late-stage syphilis. His once strong mind became clouded, and his body began to break down. Some historians speculate that the disease had run rampant through his harem, creating a cycle of infection and reinfection. In 1666, the party finally ended. Shah Abbas too died, ravaged by the disease he had contracted in his relentless pursuit of pleasure. He left his declining empire to his son, marking the beginning of the end for the great Safavid dynasty. The strong lion of Persia had been felled not by an invading army, but by a disease that conquered him from within. Number 3. The story of Crown Prince Rudolph is forever intertwined with the mystery and romance of the Mayerling Incident, a tragic love story of a handsome prince and his beautiful young mistress who died together in a remote hunting lodge. But the romanticized version hides a much darker and more painful truth, a truth rooted in disease, despair, and the crippling weight of an empire. Rudolph, born in 1858, was the only son of the stern Emperor Franz Joseph I and the famously beautiful and melancholic Empress Sisi of Austria-Hungary. His childhood was a nightmare. Torn from his mother and sister at the age of 6, He was placed under the care of a tutor who believed in breaking the boy's will through brutal military-style abuse, including sleep deprivation, ice water baths, and even firing pistols next to his head to toughen him. Though his mother eventually intervened, the damage was done. Rudolph grew into a man who was intelligent and liberal-minded, but also emotionally unstable, cynical, and prone to reckless behavior. At 23, he was forced into an arranged marriage with Princess Stephanie of Belgium, a girl of 17 whom he found dull and uninspiring. The pressure to produce a male heir was immense. After the birth of their only child, a daughter, the marriage fell apart. Rudolph threw himself into a life of heavy drinking and countless affairs with actresses and courtesans. It was in this period that he sealed his fate. He contracted not only syphilis but also gonorrhea. Tragically, he passed the infections to his wife, Stephanie. The disease, which she was told was a simple infection, ravaged her reproductive organs, leaving her sterile. She could never have another child. The dream of a male heir to the Habsburg throne was dead. This was the turning point. For Rudolph, already grappling with depression and political frustration, his liberal ideas were constantly rejected by his conservative father. The diagnosis was a death sentence. In the 19th century, syphilis was a slow, agonizing, and shameful path to madness and death. He knew what awaited him: the physical decay, the loss of his mind, the ultimate humiliation. His despair deepened. He begged one of his longtime mistresses, Mitzi Casper, to die with him in a suicide pact. Horrified, she refused and went to the police, but they dismissed her warnings. Finally, he turned to the 17-year-old Baroness Mary Vetzera, a young noblewoman who was infatuated with him. She agreed. On January 30th, 1889, at the Mayerling hunting lodge, their tragic pact was fulfilled. Rudolph shot Mary in the head before turning the gun on himself. To hide the scandal, the court concocted a story that he had died of an aneurysm. Mary's body was secretly propped up in a carriage with a broomstick to make it look like she was alive, spirited away, and buried in a potter's field. But the truth eventually emerged. The future of the Austro-Hungarian Empire had died in that lodge, not just from a bullet, but from the madness and despair wrought by a disease he could not escape. Number 2, if ever a man embodied the wild, debauched spirit of Restoration England, it was John Wilmot, the second Earl of Rochester. Born in 1647, he was a figure of dazzling contradictions. A brilliant poet whose wit was celebrated throughout the court of King Charles II, and a notorious libertine whose life was a whirlwind of alcohol, scandal, and sexual excess. Inheriting his title at just 11, he was a favorite of the king. He was handsome, charming, and utterly fearless. When the wealthy and beautiful heiress Elizabeth Mallet was chosen for him as a bride, her family resisted, wary of his reputation. Unfazed, John and his mother simply abducted her. Though she was rescued, and he was briefly thrown into the Tower of London, his audacity eventually won her over. They married and had 4 children. When the wealthy and beautiful heiress Elizabeth Mallet was chosen for him as a bride, her family resisted, wary of his reputation. Unfazed, John and his mother simply abducted her. Though she was rescued, and he was briefly thrown into the Tower of London, his audacity eventually won her over. They married and had 4 children. He took on a string of high-profile mistresses, including the famed actress Nell Gwynn, who would later become the king's mistress, and Elizabeth Barry, whom he coached into becoming the greatest actress of her generation and who bore him a child. In the midst of this chaos, he wrote some of the most scathing satires and beautiful lyric poetry of the age. But his life was a reckless gamble with his health. In a world where syphilis was rampant, Rochester's lifestyle made contracting it a near certainty. When he mocked the king's own sexual obsessions in a play, he was banished from court. He reinvented himself as Dr. Bendo, a quack fertility doctor, touring London in disguise and using the ruse to seduce his female patients. By his early 30s, the disease had caught up to him. The descent was horrifyingly rapid and public. The handsome Earl was transformed into a grotesque figure. His body was covered in painful sores, his vision failed, and his nose reportedly rotted away. He lost control of his body, becoming blind and incontinent. The once brilliant mind that had produced such dazzling poetry was clouded by pain and confusion. He died in 1680 at the age of 33, a ravaged and broken man. His life became a cautionary tale, a symbol of genius consumed by debauchery. The final verse of his life was not a beautiful lyric, but a cruel and agonizing testament to the devastating power of syphilis. Number 1. Of all the royals who suffered from syphilis, none had a story whose consequences echoed so profoundly through the corridors of European history as Holy Roman Emperor Joseph I. His personal failing, born of the same lust that plagued so many of his peers, did not just destroy his family, it plunged an entire continent into war. Born in 1678, Joseph was the eldest son of Emperor Leopold I. He was heir to the vast and powerful Habsburg lands. Like many young royals, he was energetic and pleasure-loving, indulging in lavish parties and a string of endless affairs. At 21, his mother, Empress Eleanor, arranged his marriage to Wilhelmina Amalia of Brunswick-Lüneburg, a pious and serious woman chosen for her renowned fertility. Before the wedding, she was subjected to a humiliating medical examination to confirm she could bear children, a chilling reminder that for royal women, their womb was their most important asset. Initially, the couple was happy and produced 2 daughters and a son, Leopold Joseph, but the infant boy died of hydrocephalus before his first birthday. The pressure to produce another male heir became intense. It was around this time that Joseph, in one of his many careless affairs, allegedly with the daughter of a palace gardener, contracted syphilis. In a breathtaking act of selfishness and ignorance, he continued his marital duties and infected his devout wife. For Wilhelmina Amalia, the result was catastrophic. The disease rendered her permanently infertile. She would never bear another child, let alone the male heir the empire so desperately needed. When Joseph ascended to the throne in 1705, he was the powerful ruler of a vast domain, but he was also a man without a direct male successor. The foundation of his dynasty was built on sand. For the next 6 years, he ruled over an empire embroiled in the costly War of the Spanish Succession. In 1711, at the age of 32, Emperor Joseph I died, not from syphilis, but from a smallpox epidemic that swept Vienna. However, the true damage had already been done years before. Because he had no surviving sons, the Habsburg throne and all its territories passed to his younger brother, Charles VI. But the agreement Joseph had signed stated that if Charles also failed to produce a son, Joseph's own daughters would inherit. Charles, in a desperate attempt to secure his own line, spent his reign trying to get the other European powers to accept his daughter Maria Theresa as his heir. Many refused. Upon Charles's death, the succession crisis that Joseph's infertility had created finally exploded. The great powers of Europe descended like vultures, sparking the devastating, continent-spanning war of the Austrian succession. A single secret infection, passed from a reckless emperor to his unsuspecting wife, had ultimately redrawn the map of Europe through years of bloodshed and conflict. From the perfumed courts of Persia to the rain-slicked streets of London and the grand palaces of Vienna, the story of syphilis among royalty is a powerful and sobering one. It is a tale of how human desire, vanity, and secrecy can have consequences that ripple through generations. These 5 figures, separated by time and culture, are united by a shared, tragic fate. They wielded immense power, commanded armies, and lived lives of unimaginable luxury. Yet they were brought to their knees by an invisible enemy they could neither understand nor defeat. Their stories serve as a stark reminder that beneath the gilded trappings of power lies a fundamental human vulnerability. The same passions and weaknesses that drive ordinary people can, in the lives of monarchs, alter the course of history. Today, with the advent of penicillin, the horrors of syphilis have been relegated to the footnotes of medical texts. But the shadow it cast over these royal lives remains a chilling lesson, a testament to an era when a whispered secret in a royal bedchamber could bring an empire to ruin. Thank you for watching Silent Atrocities. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more absolutely insane historical content that your teachers were too polite to mention, hit that subscribe button right now, share and comment below. See you in the next one.